Hi there. Welcome to the webinar. We're so glad you are here with us. And I'm also going to say a welcome to those of you watching on the recording later. We are doing this webinar for past participants of engineering leadership. And right now we have Gabriel and Eric are in the room with us who have been through the program. So hi, it's great to see you. We're going to officially start in just a minute, but wanted to say a quick hello before we get rolling. I think we
have the capability of some dialogue guides, and so we've got a chat capability. So I'm just kind of curious how you're doing, and how your family is. And
yeah, hey, Terry just joined us. Hi, Terry.
Hi, Terry.
Good to see you. Well, we can't technically see you, but good to chat with you all. All right, we're at 3 o'clock, so let's officially get started. I'm not sure we need to say hello, but for people who went through the program before I started at the University of Notre Dame, I will introduce myself. I'm Vicki Maris, and I'm an assistant director in the Stair Center for Executive Education. And it's my delight to be here with Pete DeLisle today, who teaches the Engineering Leadership Program. So several of you who are with us live here in the webinar were in our April offering of that program, and we're glad to have you back, put air quotes around that, back on the campus at the University of Notre Dame. And again, for any of you watching on the recording, we too are glad that you're spending some time with us. We know that your time is one of your most precious resources, and so it's an honor to hang out with you here today.
And I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna ask Vicki to tell you folks a little bit about her background and whatnot, because Vicki and I are colleagues. She's my boss, if you will, for this engineering leadership program, but she's got this terrific background and perspective, and working together, we're going to ask you to help us affirm what you've done with us, and in turn, start thinking about what some of the things are that you might want to talk about for the future as well. So would you tell them a little bit about, the part the Witness Protection Program allows you to disclose?
I was going to say, which part of my background do you want me to share? The higher education background, the corporate background, or the farm or the music background?
All three, as far as I'm concerned, no.
Vicki Maris in a nutshell. I'm new to University of Notre Dame. I started in November, and I got to work with Pete the first time in this certificate in executive management, which is the module, the leadership module you teach in the March session of that program. I'm just delighted to be here at the university. I spent many years at another Indiana institution, most of those years in the College of Engineering at Purdue University before coming here, and then in corporate America before that. But I also live on a farm with my husband. We have llamas and 2 Connemara ponies and a few rabbits, and we are musicians that perform around the state of Indiana on the weekends.
So you remember we talked about the Renaissance man or woman. I give you Vicki Maris, ladies and gentlemen. So that being said, I see some of you have already started the chat process here. Once again, we want to center this conversation around some of your thoughts and observations, kind of going back and looking at maybe some of the things we talked about, and then just bring to fore a couple of big questions like, so how was the transition? Are there things that we talked about in class that made sense once you got back home? Did you have anybody to talk to when you got back home? Because a number of us work in organizations where there have been multiple participants, and I hope you've developed kind of a cohort or a fellowship there. And again, another question just on the table that we can examine here is, what kinds of things do you need at this point in time going forward that might increase your efficacy? So just a couple of things for you to think about. Do you see some responses here already, or?
Not, oh, hang on, let me scroll down and make sure I'm not missing anything.
So anyway.
And we'll go to that other slide for just a second. I wanted to also just quickly let you know that if you are interested in sharing with your colleagues anything about the program, or invite your colleagues to attend, we do have another session coming up in the fall here in October on the campus here in South Bend, and one in April of 2019 as well. So we're doing them spring and fall of each year, and we'd love for you to refer your colleagues if you think they too would benefit from it. We always want to make sure what you're selecting for your professional development aligns with what your needs are in the moment. And hopefully this session we'll do some more of that.
Add value there as well.
Yes,
So,
yeah. So please do type your questions if you have them, and I'll be watching the chat as Pete is covering some of the content here today.
So once again, thanks for joining us. This is really difficult to do because it's like television, you know, and I can't see your faces. So just nod to the camera, or raise your hands. I'm kind of wondering how many of you made some transitions when you got back, and I want you to reflect back to the development model that we did, the D1 through D4 model. You recall we went novice, apprentice, journeyman, master, and we talked about the contingencies between our growth and development from one stage to the next, and how important it was to kind of get a combination of direction and feedback from significant people. In some cases, hopefully it's your boss. In other cases, it might be just one of those Jedi masters that's around there that'll actually help you through the process. So I'm just going to turn to the whiteboard. It's not going to work as well as you visualizing this thing, but I just want to go back and describe that D1 through D4 model real quick here, if you remember, and then talk about some of the implications of the idea behind the model, which is what we want to do is move toward a level of efficacy, toward a point where we become increasingly self-organizing and self-managing, which is that's D4, you know, that's Obi-Wan, right? And so in our technical skills, in our interpersonal skills, and in terms of our planning and organizing and controlling skills, depending upon what strata you're in the organization, we saw that there are ways that we can develop new skills once we identify what those things are. And you remember kind of jokingly we talked about consciousness and competence, but actually the real model was smart and cute, and we all want to be conscious and competent. And so developing this capability moving in this direction is the key. But my big question for you was, when you made the next step, do you recall part of the implication of the model was that, you know, in your last job, you might have been fully developed and self-organizing and self-managing. Then you moved into your first role, depending upon where you are in terms of your responsibilities, perhaps as a first-line supervisor, perhaps as that product manager, that middle manager responsible for guiding the work of a whole bunch of people plus some subordinates. And in some cases, you moved into a director's role where you were responsible for major parts of the organization, like running the engineering operation or the quality operation or something like that. And so my thought was, remember now, we go from here to here. We don't skip a step. We have to go through these early stages where D1 is just kind of reminding ourselves essentially where the bathroom is and feeling that sense of uncertainty, but not be daunted by the fact that you're trying to learn how to do it because it's a different level of responsibility. And if you recall, part of the conversation that I had with you was that you get promoted because in many cases you got really, really good, strong problem solving and technical skills. You move to a next level and all of a sudden the mix changes from your technical problem solving to different kinds of things like human factors, where it's interpersonal issues and conflict management, and then resource utilization stuff like time management or bringing product realization process to the fore. And you move into that position because you're really good at that problem solving issue, and nobody tells you it's a different job. So there's a discontinuity when you make that move. And sometimes it can be very unsettling, and yet we don't want to admit it to people. And the underlying issue right here is it's okay as you move to the next level to be uncertain and to seek guidance from other people. And then recognizing in this stage of development that we're moving to is that there's going to be a learning curve there, regardless of what strata in the organization you're at. There's going to be a learning curve, and that's where you're going to need some support and assistance from people who can help you gain more competence in the areas that you're working on, specifically in terms of problem solving and guiding the organization, but also some more feedback about developing greater capability with your interpersonal skill, like some of those more nuanced aspects of it, like how do you manage conflict with a different mindset? Remember, we talked about conflict's normal. It's this relentless pursuit of excellence while sustaining effective relationships with people in a finite period of time. And time is always that issue because it's non-renewable. We can't get any more time. So we have to be relentless in how we approach these kinds of things. So that's a nuanced issue. And then the other one we talked about was the whole idea of cognitive climates where, we're working with people who generate tons and tons of ideas, but are kind of short on execution. And then we got other people that are drilling down on stuff, but sometimes don't pay attention to the world as it's happening around them, and how we need to build harmony between that innovator and that bridger. You remember the cartilage to muscle and bone, and then that adapter. And those were some of the things that we talked about in class, but create kind of a more nuanced and more sophisticated approach to some of the more difficult problems that you're probably going to be encountering as you move in the organization. So is that any thoughts at this point, or are we?
We do have one that has popped in here, and we've had several more people join us as well. Let me give a shout out here. Brad is here. Let's see, I've already mentioned that Eric and Gabriel are here. Heather has joined us. Stephanie is here, and Terry, who I mentioned earlier.
Hi, folks.
Hi, everybody. We're glad to have you here. Okay, so we have.
Hopefully, this is not as lame as like PBS fundraising. Okay, but it's kind of feeling that way right now. So,
do you want to get the phone?
Yes, please dial 1-800. It's great to see some familiar voices, faces, names. So.
All right, here is what's been typed in here. Definitely making a transition from D2 to D3 in my manager role. Sometimes wishing I was a D3, D4 in my last job again.
Yeah.
I feel pretty confident in my ability in the job and the expectations, just trying to figure out if I still actually like the job.
Yeah, wow. You remember sometimes we get promoted and we find out that we'd rather be doing something else. And if that's kind of the tone of what you're talking about, one of the best things about the field of engineering is over the last 25 years, people have actually recognized that to be a really, really good engineer is as valuable as being a really good manager. So if you're feeling unsettled about this point in time, don't lose hope. It may, in fact, take some time, and you recall the D2 to D3 slope that you have to climb here is a reasonably steep climb for a period of time. But the big question I'd ask you is, do you have somebody that's giving you that combination of assistance, direction, and feedback? Because if you're not getting the feedback that you need at this early stage, then you're going to probably fall back a little bit, or you might jump too far thinking that you're more fully developed. You remember the dynamic of the model in that particular sense. But you also are reflecting the fact, in my estimation, that you know now that it's a different job, and it may not be something you really want to do for an extended period of time. I'm not trying to talk you out of it, because we need all of you actively involved in growing and developing in terms of your skills and capabilities. But I guess the silver lining in the dark cloud might be you're struggling with this stuff, which means it's going to be really cool for you later on when you see other people that are maybe hitting some speed bumps in these transitions, to be able to be there for them to talk them through it. We have to remember now that we don't want to ever show anybody that we don't know what we're doing. And so sometimes we keep our own counsel when in fact what we really need to do is turn to others and ask for a little bit of assistance at that point in time as well. So don't hesitate to do that. If you find that in your current climate, your boss doesn't have the interpersonal interests necessary for you to grow and develop in this particular area, then you might find yourself turning to some other people who might be able to coach through that. But it's a temporary period. It's not a steady state period. And you'll also recall that, because remember when we were kind of fiddling with the model here, you just about catch your breath. See if I can get a different color in here. You're just about catching your breath. You just got your arms around it. You're doing a really good job. And then they promote you, which means you move from, oh, I really like that, to, oh, shoot, now I've got to start from scratch all over again. But you remember, it's the same process of renewal, and you can move from stage to stage. It gets less painful as you make more and more of these transitions, because at least you can kind of boot yourself to the next challenge going forward. Now, please tell me, was I even in the ballpark for you? Did that help at all?
I'll watch for a response here. We have a new one that says, my direct supervisor is a great mentor and leader. He's a big reason why I am still hanging on. Good, glad to hear it. Well, go ahead, please. Well, I was thinking of something that somebody said in the April session about, I made the assumption it was someone that liked their role, but they were talking about the difficulty that happens when you lose somebody on your team and you have to be covering that other role, which I'm assuming you might be lower on that,
Just right,
on
yeah,
the
yeah.
scale, yeah.
Yeah.
Just curious to your thoughts there when somebody's trying to juggle 2 or 3 roles.
Well, the old cliche is that work gravitates to excellent people until they submerge. And so the likelihood of you having to wear more than one hat in a rapidly changing environment is going to be very, very high. Back to the affirming statement that you made about, I really like my immediate supervisor and they're really good at these kinds of things. Make a memory of that. Develop that in your own mind as a model, because you want to emulate that behavior in your own way. You don't want to do what he does. You want to do how he does it for others based upon your own personal style. But another one of these almost cliche statements is that people work for people. And I can assure you that in your career, as you grow and develop, the benchmarks of your most effective times in the profession will be working with folks that you trusted, that assisted you, helped you grow and develop. And in fact, in many cases, believe it or not, they may be the person that gives you the lift, and you might end up even being their boss at some point in time in terms of your growth and development in the organization. And that's an honorable thing, and you want to always celebrate that and thank people. Now, I'm not recommending you run back to your boss and throw your arms around her or him, because that would just be really creepy. But what I do suggest you do is the next time you're involved in your development conversations and whatnot, just say, thanks a lot. I'm learning a lot, and you're helping me a lot as well. And that's better than a paycheck. So I'm really pleased to hear that's working. And by the way, I want you to be that person for the folks that are working for you. So anyway, we doing okay? Hands, please. Yes.
Yeah, if you want to just give us type a yes in the chat if you're tracking with what Pete's talking about here, and help us know that we're on the right track. We can make a shift if we need to do that. Okay, you're getting a thumbs up, a yes.
Yay.
A smiley face.
Oh boy.
Another thumbs up.
No heart emoji or anything? Come on now.
We've got about 10 more minutes that we can either take some questions from you. Pete and I were also, as we were just chatting before we started the webinar, this is new, what we're doing here for us and this particular program. So I would also love your feedback on whether you feel like us bringing some content to you post-program, is this helpful? Would you like us to do this again, and how frequently? Every 6 months, once a year, once a month? Pete and I don't necessarily have to be in the same room. We could be remote in our various locations and do a 20-minute or a 30-minute call, a Zoom call that you could join. Yeah. So I'm really curious on your feedback there.
And just to hitchhike with Vicki for a second here, oftentimes, and you probably encountered this, as you go back and you've got this new set of ideas and you don't have anybody to talk to. So if we think of ourselves as kind of a collegium, and as you had your own classmates, and hopefully you develop positive relationships with them that you can continue. But if we start to think about this as a engineering leadership cohort, we should be able to draw on each other's experiences and assist each other in the process as well. So, we need your feedback at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. So I'm seeing, this is a great way to have us on top, keep us on top of our leadership game, and to have a support system. We have a suggestion of a couple of times per year would be perfect. And this is great.
A couple of your comments already helped us kind of shape how we're going to talk with people in the next session as well, because the sessions are a developmental process, or in a developmental process too. And what we've discovered is hopefully lessons learned that we learned in the course of having conversations with you enabled us to do some different things or do some enhancements as well. And so we hope the program lasts a while, and we'd like you to actively contribute to it in the sense of having some sense of ownership. So, for example, big question would be, what's out there? What are the question about the D2, D3, D3, D4 is spot on, but what are some of the big issues that you're encountering in your organization right now that maybe nobody's even talking about, but you can kind of see with a different set of eyes now? So those might be some of the things going forward. So
okay, yeah.
Again, limitations of technology, but
Okay, we have another comment. I've told my peers and my employees my experience at this course last fall was probably one of the best academic experiences I've ever had, and Pete was a huge part of that. Pete, what other classes do you teach?
Well, you know, it's kind of like Jimmy Buffett, and he's only got one song. No, I'm teasing. But what I try to do is the privilege for me is working with you in the technical world, because you are, as we talked about, some of the most conceptually flexible people that I've ever encountered. You just kind of get it. And the other is you got real problems to solve, and you're having a material impact on how the world's operating. That's really close to, you know, to my personal values as well. I do have the privilege to work with other programs at Notre Dame, but right now they're mostly in this construct that we call executive education. And so we've got some classes that may at some point in time be some of the things you might want to investigate as well, and we can make a link to those courses too, because you may find yourself as you move within the organization that having a conversation with a finance person is a really important thing as you start to move into that level of responsibility going forward. And I get a chance to come in and teach in some of those classes as well, but you can well imagine it's it's adapter innovator stuff, and it's Joe Harry window and all what I consider to be kind of the classics in terms of content. But the thing I enjoy most is helping people create an environment where they actually go back home and try to get things done. And I don't know that I even remotely answered your question at that point in time, but basically I've specialized in the things that we talked about in our class as well.
If you haven't done it yet and are interested in the certificate in executive management, the module that Pete teaches in is in March of next year. And you cover the leadership topics on day one, so you would go through that assessment again. I think you would find some value, and you'd be with a different cohort of people from many different industries. So there would be some other engineers in the room and a lot of other professional disciplines represented. The second day of that particular module is with Bev Patwell, who teaches change management. And you are more than welcome to enroll in certificate in the modules a la carte. So if you just wanted to take one module, or if you just wanted to do the one in May that is on finance and accounting for the non-financial manager, you're welcome to just take one of them. You don't have to do all four. So that's one way. You could catch Pete again if you wanted a refresher in his leadership topics. That's coming March of 2019.
Hopefully that helps, and those people in those courses, teaching those courses, are a lot smarter than I am, which you'll discover almost immediately. So I commend them to you. Just to answer the question a little bit more derived, I spend a considerable amount of time trying to help people with conflict management and conflict resolution, performance development. We touched on what D1 through D4, but developing strategic interventions for organizations for performance development, counseling executives, some strategy stuff. One of the things I really like to spend time on is talking about building and sustaining cultural values and beliefs that have a strong ethical component to them as well. So those are all things that are kind of surrounding the core curriculum that you saw. And oh, by the way, many of you gave us some wonderful feedback saying, you know, 2.5 days, we kind of raced through a lot of stuff. It'd be worthwhile to spend more time on some things, and we took that deadly seriously. So we're actually going to extend some hours on the front end of the program in October and at the tail end to give you a chance to work through some of those issues that we talked about in class, but sadly in some cases only gave a glancing blow, so that hopefully we'll get a chance to fortify some of your strategies going back home. So when you're back home, you can literally hit the ground running. So hopefully that'll be something you'll see as well as people report back.
So we have another one. This is a great refresher. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and not do the self-reflection necessary to be a good leader.
Yeah. Boy, it's hard, huh? You know, remember we talked about your job is kind of like playing whack-a-mole. And it's really hard. Even though you get your tickets at the end of the game, you may not have time to go get that 4-foot teddy bear that you want, or whatever it is. And so almost, it's one of those paradoxical statements now. It's almost like you got to make a task out of critical reflection. You got to write down, or however you organize your time and say, I'm going to spend half an hour a week at least. And ideally, what you'll find is if you start making some notes about some of the things you've encountered, some of the success that you have, which by the way is always good to have in your hip pocket, especially when you're having difficulty, some of the areas that you might want to investigate further, and some of the lessons learned. And lessons learned are that critical reflection that we talk quite a bit about, but actually lessons learned is as important to you and your organization's efficiency and capabilities as anything else that we do in terms of planning. So again, you're gonna be selfish now. You're gonna quiet time, 30 minutes at least, and just sit down and say, what did we do this week? What worked? What did I learn? How might things be differently? And give yourself a pat on the back as well, because you're doing extraordinarily difficult things. And I'm proud of you for that. Other things, folks.
A question here about one of the other programs. Is the supervisory development program any different than the engineering leadership program, and is it worthwhile to do both? I'll go ahead and take it. Pete's nodding his head.
Yeah, I would say so.
You're getting a double head nod here. I've got the experience of sitting through that program for the first time in April of this year. So with a fresh set of lenses on both engineering leadership and supervisory development, and yes.
Yeah.
Very different, not very different, but different perspectives.
Yeah.
There are two different instructors who teach in supervisory development, one on day one, the next on day two. You'll do a different assessment than what you do in engineering leadership with Pete. Some of the stories are different.
Exactly.
All of our instructors are really incredible storytellers that bring the concepts to life. You're one of the best in the business at this.
I don't think so, but
you are. And we've got two more that teach in that supervisory development program that have, just like Pete, years and years of experience on the ground, in their craft, and now they're in the classroom capturing and then sharing what they captured it earlier, and now they're sharing it with all of us. And all of the instructors I've had the privilege to work with here, Pete included, are consummate lifelong learners. Still doing research, still trying new things to apply in the field, and that it comes out in the stories and the case studies and the things that they share. So yes, I represent both of those programs, and I love to see enrollments come in. So, I've got to confess that up front.
Yeah.
But they're very different. So especially if you're a newer supervisor and still getting used to interacting with people that report up to you, I think you would really love that program.
So
go ahead.
No, I can't state it any better. But the one comment that Vicki made, and I think that's something we discovered together, was hearing other people's perspectives and other stories. You mentioned a different set of lenses. I think would be a significantly positive thing in the story. And as you know, sometimes as engineers we can be very, very focused, and we can stop paying attention to things outside of our peripheral vision. So hearing the trials and tribulations of somebody who's not building stuff, maybe they're in the hospitality industry, or maybe they're a banker or whatnot, is useful because you'll recognize problems that they have, but they're different, and they have a different perspective. And as you increase in your responsibilities, you'll start to see that there's an awful lot of interconnectivity amongst these different perspectives and views of the world, and different ideas of how you conduct yourself and how you comport yourself in terms of leading people. And I think it'll fortify for you the whole engineer mindset that we talk about in class, yet at the same time you can draw some lessons from how other people approach these things as well. So I strongly recommend it because, well, once again, it's that D1 through D4 type of thing. You want to continue your investigation going forward, and it will help, again, with the whole idea of critical self-reflection, because it'll fortify that for you as well. I think I told you a story about how the Army prepares leaders, and in our average 20-year career for an Army officer, for example, you go from being a lieutenant to a captain to a major to a colonel and so forth. In that 20-year career, that person may spend 8 years actively involved in formal education, going to various certificate programs, various workshops, and in some cases, maybe even a year-long program that they participate in. And so what a paradox that is. The Army's recognizes fundamentally how important education is. So don't for a minute think that taking another seminar that takes you off task or confuses the issue, because it really is about how much information we can acquire and how that has a positive impact on our capabilities as well.
Thank you, Pete.
Sure.
We're going to wrap up with that to keep as best we can to our 30-minute promise to you. We would love for you to recommend the program if you have colleagues who haven't yet participated. And I would like to make a special request that you connect with us if you are not already in our LinkedIn STAIR Center for Executive Education Showcase page. If you just go into your LinkedIn account and search on Notre Dame Executive Education, it will pop up for you. And I would like to challenge you to just scroll back a few posts, maybe back last week. You'll find one about this webinar, and share it on your own LinkedIn profile and let people know that you participated with us today or that you watched the recording. That would be just a neat way to get the word out a little bit that we're trying this webinar format to further provide the content even further. Thank you very much for being here. We really do appreciate it. And thank you, Pete. This was terrific.
Thanks, Vicki. Adios, folks.
Bye.